Do you know what happened next? Watch this story with us till the end. A small village surrounded by narrow alleys, where every morning began with labor and every night with exhaustion. In one of the old houses of this village lived Zarina with her mother Dot. It wasn't just a house, it was more like a broken shelter. Rainwater dripped from the thatched roof, and cracks ran through the walls. But within those walls lived a priceless treasure, a mother's love and the wealth of faith. Zarina's father had passed away when she was only 5 years old. Since then, her mother had tried to raise her with the strength of hard labor. Sometimes she worked in people's homes, sometimes in the fields, and sometimes she gathered wood from the forest to sell. Even after all this effort, it was hard to afford 2 full meals a day. Zarina's dreams were small, but her heart was big. She only wanted her mother to live in comfort, without any pain. But fate still had other plans. People in the village looked at Zarina strangely. Some called her cursed, blaming her for losing her father at such a young age. Others mocked her poverty. But Zarina bore it all with patience, because her mother had taught her that God sees everything and is always on the side of the oppressed. Every morning, Zarina would go to the forest to gather wood, then try to sell it in the village. Some would take pity and buy it. Others would mock her and drive her away. Day and night, she worked tirelessly to feed herself and her mother. This was her life, gathering sticks in the forest, selling them, and surviving on whatever little money she earned. Then one day, her fate took such a sudden turn that her entire life changed. As usual, Zarina entered the forest, but that day, there was barely any dry wood to be found. She thought, this won't be enough. So, she decided to go deeper into the forest. Her mother had always warned her, never go into the inner parts of the forest. But that day, in search of wood, Zarina stepped into its mysterious depths. The forest was dense and eerie. Tall trees surrounded her. There was darkness and an odd silence all around. But Zarina kept moving forward without fear. Her mother was on her mind, and the weight of responsibility silenced any sense of fear. Eventually, she reached the heart of the forest. That's when she noticed an old wooden chest, half buried in the ground, as if someone had buried it there centuries ago. Her heart began to race. She wondered, what is this? Who put it here? Sweat beaded on her forehead, and though fear gripped her, curiosity overpowered it. She wanted to know what was inside. Gathering her courage, Zarina began to dig. As soon as she opened the chest, a strong gust of wind blew through the forest. Dust rose all around her, and a thick black smoke began to emerge, rising into the sky like storm clouds. Then, slowly, the smoke began to take form. A strange creature appeared. Was a Jinn. Zarina froze. Her breath quickened. The smoke solidified into a tall figure. Its body was human-like, but its eyes glowed brightly. There was no anger on its face, only a strange stillness and deep sorrow. For a while it stared into the sky, as though trying to comprehend its freedom after centuries of imprisonment. Then, it transformed into a handsome young man. His beauty was mesmerizing. His eyes were blue, like the depths of the ocean. Finally, he looked at Zarina and asked in a deep, calm voice, Who are you? A human girl. Zarina's throat went dry. Her throat was dry, but she gathered courage and replied in a trembling voice, I'm Zarina, and who are you? The Jinn let out a cold sigh and said, I am Azara Jinn, who was imprisoned centuries ago, and you have freed me from that prison. Zarina's eyes widened in shock. She had heard stories about jinns, but never imagined she would one day speak to one-face-2-face. With fear still in her voice, she asked, Will you harm me? Azar gave a sad little laugh and replied, If I wanted to harm you, child, you would not still be alive. No, I am grateful to you. You freed me. Zarina then asked, How did you take on a human form? Azar smiled and said, Through my spiritual powers. He continued, Since you freed me after all these years, I shall grant you 3 wishes. Zarina paused. Should she wish for riches? A palace for her mother? But then, she remembered her mother's teachings ask only from Allah, not from humans or Jinn. She looked into Azar's glowing eyes and said, I don't want any wishes. Just tell me, why were you imprisoned? Azar was taken aback. No one had ever asked him such a thing before. He took a deep breath, and pain flickered in his eyes. Looking up at the sky, he began, Centuries ago, I was just an ordinary Jinn-free, living life on my own terms. But in the world of humans, there was a cruel and greedy king named Sultan Hamza. His voice deepened with emotion. He wanted to misuse my powers. With the help of a dark sorcerer, he plotted to imprison me. Zarina listened, holding her breath. He summoned me to his court and commanded, Azar, destroy my enemies. But I refused. You see, even among jinns, there is a land I could not bring myself to be part of such cruelty. Sultan Hamza did not like being refused. He had me imprisoned in this chest through deception and, not just me, he also captured my brother. My brother didn't survive. The sorcerer cast a powerful spell. I could not be freed until an innocent, human soul opened the chest. Ozar's eyes showed both anger and sorrow. He added, and today, after centuries, you've set me free. Zarina's skin crawled. She had never imagined she would meet a Jinn who had been imprisoned for centuries. Gathering her courage, she asked, So, what will you do now? Azar paused for a moment, then said, First, I wish to repay your kindness. Since you released me, I can grant you 3 wishes. Zarina remained silent for a while, then replied, I don't want to ask for anything. Azar looked at her in surprise. Why? Why won't you wish for something? I want to give you something from my own will, Zarina softly said. If you are truly grateful, then just help me as a friend, not with magic. I want to change my fate with hard work, not through a jinn's miracles. Azar was stunned. He had never heard such words from a human before. He took a deep breath and said, You're a strange girl, Zarina, and perhaps that's why destiny chose you to set me free. Zarina asked, Then what happens now? Azar smiled and said, From now on, I'm your friend, and I'll take you on a journey that will help you discover the real reason for your existence. Then, Azar leads Zarina to a magical tree. There, he showed her his entire life reflected within the glowing bark of the tree. Zarina couldn't believe her eyes. She was watching someone's entire life unfold before her, as if it were a living memory. Darkness had deepened. The wind was cold, and moonlight fell gently on the ground. Zarina still couldn't believe she was standing beside a Jinn who could grant her anything, and yet she had refused.
Zarina refused to make a wish. A strange expression appeared on Azar's face, a mix of surprise and respect. Are you really not going to ask for anything? The Jinn asked again. Zarina lowered her head and replied, No, my mother always taught me that I should only ask from Allah, not from humans or jinns. I want to make my own destiny, not rely on the magic of a Jinn. Azar smiled and said, You are different from other humans. Allah has kept your heart very pure. Zarina gave a slight smile and said, If you are truly grateful to me, help me, but without any magic. Azar thought for a moment, then took a deep breath and said, Okay, I will be your friend, but on one condition you must never lie to me. Zarina smiled and agreed. Azar looked around and then softly said, There are some evil spirits, perhaps the same forces that kept me imprisoned for centuries. Zarina's heartbeat quickened. Will they harm us? She asked, her voice trembling. Responded, As long as I'm with you, no one can harm you, but we need to stay alert. Zarina nodded. Suddenly, a cold wind picked up. The trees began to sway, and strange, echoing voices could be heard as if many people were speaking in whispers. An eerie sensation filled the air, as if a shadow was looming over them. Then, from one side, a deep and frightening voice was heard. "Ah, Azar, are you still alive?" Zarina didn't understand what was happening. This was the first time she had encountered a Jinn and felt these voices. Azar closed his eyes and then shouted, "I am alive, and now I am free. What happened in the past is gone, but I am no longer anyone's slave." A loud scream echoed in the air, and Zarina saw shadowy figures moving in the dark. They weren't human, but floating in the air like evil spirits. There was a terrifying sound coming from them, and it filled Zarina's heart with fear. Then, a terrifying voice was heard from somewhere. "You cannot deceive us, Azar. You must return." Zarina wondered, what kind of voice is this that cannot be seen and is only felt? She was terrified and looked at Azar, whispering, "Is this a Jinn?" Azar nodded and said, "Yes, this is a Jinn, but it is not good. It is the same one that conspired against me." Zarina, trembling with fear, asked, "So what do we do now?" Azar clenched his fist and said, "You just stay behind me, and whatever happens, keep your faith strong." Zarina then quietly asked, "Will this Jinn try to harm us?" Azar looked at her and replied, "If our faith weakens, yes, but if we trust in Allah, it cannot do anything." As they were talking, the old spirits suddenly attacked them. The wind grew stronger, the trees began to fall, and the darkness deepened. But Azar stood firm in his place. He looked at Zarina and said, "Trust in me." Zarina, shaking, closed her eyes and began to quietly recite verses from the Quran. As soon as she recited, light began to spread around them. The evil spirits writhed in pain and screamed, "No, this is impossible." But slowly they turned into smoke and vanished. Everything became calm again. Azar took a deep breath and smiled, saying, "See, no force can stand before the words of Allah." Zarina's eyes filled with tears. "I thought you would protect me, but in reality, Allah has protected me." Azar lowered his head and said, "Yes, this is the truth. A person must always trust in Allah." Their bond of friendship had grown stronger, but this was just the beginning. Azar told Zarina, "I still have to fulfill my purpose. I need your help." Zarina asked, "What kind of help?" "I want to make the king who kept me imprisoned for centuries realize the truth," Azar replied. Zarina agreed, saying, "Okay." The next day, when Zarina reached the village, something strange happened. People were staring at her. What was this girl doing in the jungle at night? Was she under the influence of a Jinn? Some villagers started to turn against her. Zarina couldn't understand what to do next. Azar explained to her, "This was not your first trial. The real test is just beginning. Will you stand by me?" Azar said with a slight smile, "As long as your faith remains strong, I will never leave your side." There was a stir in the village as people began whispering strange things about her. They were talking about how she had seen a Jinn in the jungle. "Maybe she is under the shadow of a Jinn. We should take her to the mosque and show her to Maulvi Sahib." Zarina was anxious, wondering if people would believe her or if they would put her in trouble. Azar was with her, and only Zarina could see him. He said, "You don't need to be afraid. If you stand firm in truth, Allah will protect you." Some villagers took her to the mosque, where Maulvi Sahib was already waiting. "Tell the truth, daughter. What happened in the jungle?" Maulvi Sahib asked. Gently, Zarina couldn't lie. She said, "I saw a Jinn, but it was good. It helped me." The villagers became anxious and started whispering among themselves, saying, "Jinns are never good. We should separate her. She might become a threat to the village. Malvi Sahib calmed everyone down and asked Zarina again, "Did it ask anything from you?" "It only offered me friendship, and I made a promise that it would help me without using." "Magic," Zarina replied. Malvi Sahib took a deep breath and said, "If your faith is strong and you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to fear." The villagers were still confused, but they fell silent at Malvi Sahib's words. Malvi Sahib then said to Zarina, "Okay, daughter, now you may go home." Zarina returned home, but Azar's thoughts were still echoing in her mind. She kept thinking of Azar. That night, her restlessness grew. She was walking by the riverbank when suddenly Azar appeared in front of her. Zarina and Azar sat down by the river. Azar said, "Today, you showed a lot of courage." Zarina, in a soft tone, replied, "I had to speak the truth, but people still fear me. They think the shadow of a Jinn is over me, and that I am a danger to them." Azar became very sad upon hearing Zarina's words and said, "Zarina, I must leave now." Zarina was shocked. "What? Why?" Azar replied, "My mission is complete. You never asked me for anything, but you have learned everything: courage, truth, and the power of faith." Tears filled Zarina's eyes, and she said, "You are my friend. How can you leave me?" Azar smiled faintly and said, "Yes, and friendship always remains in the heart, but I must return to my world." Zarina wiped her tears and said, "I will never forget you, Azar." Azar replied, "I will never forget you either." Both had tears in their eyes. Slowly Azar turned into smoke and disappeared into the air. Zarina couldn't believe her eyes. She couldn't believe that a Jinn had helped her and now, like a dream, had disappeared. Zarina was alone now, but she was no longer the same. She had the courage, the strength to stand up for the truth. Over time, the villagers understood that there was no Jinn's shadow over Zarina. She was simply a good girl who had experienced a unique friendship. Time passed, and Zarina built a good home for her mother with her hard work. Her mother was proud of her, but sometimes, in the dark of night, when the wind blew, Zarina felt as though someone was whispering, "Zarina, I am always with you," and she would smile. Zarina's life passed beautifully, and so, dear friends, how did you like this story? Let us know in the comments. If you liked it, please subscribe